everyone. So today I am going to be telling you guys all about my bottom 10 Nancy Drew books from the original 56. So if you guys missed the first part, I did do my top 10 books. So if you are interested and you missed that video, definitely check that one out as well. So like I said in that video, these are just the ones that for some reason or another did not jive with me. I didn't enjoy reading these. I didn't like the story. Some of them just bored me to tears. Some of them just really turned me off. And I'm gonna let you guys know just little thoughts about these books. Like I said in the previous video, I have been reading the original Nancy Drew series for about a year and a half. So some of these books are ones that I've read quite a while ago. So this is all just based off of my memories and my feelings. I didn't really like write up notes for this video or anything, so everything I'm talking about is just going to be right off the top of my head and just my immediate thoughts and memories of when I was reading these. And I also didn't necessarily rank these of like best to worst or anything. I did put these in chronological order so that there is some sort of order to this video. The very first one that I really just did not like at all. This is one of two books that I ranked 1 star in my weekly short series that I was doing, reviewing these books and rating them. This was the very first one that I just did not like. This is of course book number 7, The Clue in the Diary. For me, this one was just so not interesting. I wasn't interested in the plot of the story. The characters didn't hold my attention. Nothing about this story was anything I enjoyed reading. This one was about a house explosion that Nancy and her friends stumble upon on their way back from like a carnival. The house explodes and catches on fire, and they see like someone running out of the house, and a diary is left behind, and that is the titular nature of the story. But this was just one that bored me to tears. It was about like a kooky inventor, and I just could not care about this book. I slogged through it. It took me way too long to read, probably about 2 weeks to read this book, just because I did not enjoy it at all. I'm hoping maybe in the future I will give this another go and see if I have a different experience with it, but this was a really rough one for me to get through. Next up, we have book number 13. This one's called The Mystery of the Ivory Charm. Now, this is one that I liked and didn't like. And I think that when I was trying to come to terms with, did I like this one more or did I dislike it more? The dislike kind of took over. This one did have elements that I really enjoyed. This one kind of follows like a circus kind of theme to it. But this one just had a really sad kind of story along with it. Now, of course, all the Nancy Drew stories have a happy ending, but this one just was an extra dark kind of story because it kind of touched on the theming of like child abuse and things like that, and orphan, and it was just a really kind of sad book to read. Not to mention, it also had a lot of very weird mysticism kind of thrown in as well, and it was just one of those books that, although I liked parts of it, in the end, I just didn't love this one. There's also a little bit of like animal, not torture, but you know, like circus animals and stuff, and thinking about that. And in the end, this just really wasn't a story I liked. I also remember a very weird part of the story where they're trying to like describe this strange surroundings. And I remember rereading the description like 4 or 5 times, and I never could conjure up an image in my mind of what this place was describing because it was so strange. Unfortunately, it did make it into my bottom 10. Next up, we have book number 16. This one is called The Clue of the Tapping Heels. This is one of the Nancy Drew books that I call like a hometown mystery. Now, of course, River Heights is Nancy's hometown, but I kind of lump any of the mysteries that either are directly in River Heights or are in a nearby fictional place. I kind of lump them all together as a hometown mystery. And this was one that I just really didn't think was that interesting, other than the fact that there is a villain and he keeps getting into a house in a specific way, but you don't know how he keeps doing it. And that's kind of like the whole mystery they're trying to unravel, is like, how is he doing this over and over? And I think that once you finally kind of get the answer to that, it's a little comical in a way, say, but overall this one just really involved a woman who breeds Persian cats, and her priceless cats keep disappearing, and there's a strange tapping noise that they keep hearing. So this was just one that I didn't really find that interesting. Next up we have book number 22. This one is The Clue in the Crumbling Wall. It has a little bit of like a hazy memory in my mind. I'm not very clear of like the story on this one, as like when I was reading it I remember bits and pieces of it, and I remember it was one of those stories that again had a lot of like really elaborate surrounding descriptions, but no matter what I did I couldn't quite envision the surrounding that well. This one involves like an old abandoned castle outside of River Heights, and there is supposedly a treasure hidden somewhere on the property, and the person who has inherited the estate is like missing or can't be found, and so it's kind of one of those like race against time type of stories where they have to find the heir. I remember this one having all the like bones and the structures of having a really good story, but how they wove it together in the end, just I felt like it wasn't the best kind of writing. It was also supposed to have a bit of like a Cinderella narrative, which I kind of feel like they completely abandoned at one point, and they could have made like a much stronger storyline if they were going to do like the whole rags to riches story. I feel like they either should have done it and done it well, or just not have done it at all. So in the end, this was just one that I felt like had so much potential, but it just really fell flat in the end. Next up we have book number 24. This one is The Clue in the Old Album. This one involves a elderly woman who has a large collection of dolls, and the dolls are mysteriously stolen, and this one also involves a lot of Romany people, but of course it refers to them as the word gypsy, which I believe is not quite as socially acceptable anymore. It's a bit of a slur as to my knowledge. So this one does have a lot of, again, some more not necessarily racially insensitive but like ethnic group insensitivities, and I also felt like just the mystery itself just wasn't that good in this story. I felt like again it had all the elements to make a really good story, but the way they pulled it together and everything that happened just wasn't what I thought the story was about. I felt like the title of it was a very small kind of element of the story and didn't quite fit the name of the story that well. Unfortunately, this one just really wasn't one that I really enjoyed, even though I felt like it had all the makings of a story that I would love. It just, once again, it fell flat for me. Next up we have book number 26. This one's called The Clue in the Leaning Chimney. This one is another kind of like an art related mystery, but this one is more of like an Asian art kind of theming to it. This is another story where I feel like the title didn't really fit with the mystery that well, and this one also does have a little bit of cultural insensitivities. This one is very heavily based on like a Chinese artist who is trying to recover his stolen vase that was stolen out of a shop that he lent it to, so Nancy's trying to track all that down. The story also has a lot of like really wild twists and turns, and in the end, once you kind of like get to the big reveal, it kind of left me going like, oh my gosh, this is like a little bit of a deep story. So this was one that, although I do enjoy, this one does have a bit of a plot twist that I did not see coming, which I feel like is very rare in the Nancy Drew series. Most of the time you start to recognize a lot of patterns, and you know, obviously the clues are very obvious at times, so there's not too many times where I feel like I kind of get got in a Nancy Drew book, even though this was the case with this one. But overall, I just feel like this was one that just wasn't that great of a mystery. It had a really cool element of almost this cult-like kind of entity that I thought should have been like the main purpose of the whole story, but it was such a teeny tiny detail, I felt like it was just kind of a missed opportunity. Alright guys, the next one I have is book number 28, and this one is called The Clue of the Black Keys. I'm not gonna lie, this book I have so little memories of. I'm really like put it on here just because I really can't remember much of the story at all. One thing I do remember is that Nancy ends up going to the Florida Keys, and then last minute she ends up going to another location. I felt like the pacing of the story was so off, and that the ending location should have been more worked into the story, and someplace that we spent more time at. It just felt so rushed all at the end. I was left wanting more, and I was like, you know what? This one just could have been so good. But it was another one of those mysteries where we end up knowing who the villain is, like from the get-go, and then Nancy's just like chasing them down the whole story. And those are my least favorite mysteries of the Nancy Drew stories, because I feel like it completely removes the entire mystery aspect from the story, which is the whole point. And so anytime we run into those stories where we know who they are from the beginning, it always knocks it down a few points in my opinion. All right, next up we have book number 37. This one is The Clue in the Old Stagecoach. This was one that when I was reading it, it really struck me as feeling like one of the very early Nancy Drew stories. However, it is 37 books in. So whenever I was reading this one, and especially when it was sandwiched between the two mysteries it just felt so out of place time-wise for me. And maybe that's just my opinion, but it really kind of felt like it should have been within the first 10 Nancy Drew books, just because of the mystery of it, how it was written, what they do. It just felt like a really rookie Nancy Drew book, and it just felt so out of place as far as I had gotten in the series. So that was kind of really why I ranked this one so low. It just felt like this was left in the drafts for 20 years, and they were like, oh yeah, let's pull that one out and publish it. And that's truly what it felt like while I was reading it. Next up we have book number 50. This one is The Double Jinx Mystery. This is another one that really didn't stand out in my mind that much, and I feel like that's an even worse thing to say because this is book number 50. This was like, what, 6 books ago, and I don't remember what's in it, and I just read it. Now I do remember that this one has to do with bird farmer who is getting bullied out of his land by a big building development, and they are trying to, you know, take over his land to build their luxury condos. And this one heavily falls on the whole like superstitious type of storylines, which I just felt like it wasn't that interesting. I felt like nothing really happened much in the story. There was also several very laughable plot points that served absolutely no purpose in this story, i.e. when Nancy decides to take a group of kids on a play date, a cop pulls her over. It was just kind of a lot of ridiculous things that were going on in the story. But the number one reason why I put it on my bottom 10 list is because the whole time we're building up through this mystery, and then it takes such a left turn where it's like, where is this story going? And it took such a hard left turn. It felt like someone else just came in and was trying to finish up the story, and they took such sensational approach to it that it made no sense, and it just did not have any carry through the mystery. So unfortunately this one just was the stereotypical, we don't know how to wrap up this mystery, let's just throw a cult on it. And so that's definitely why this one is in my bottom 10. And finally, the last book in my bottom 10 is number 54, The Strange Message in the Parchment. Now this one, you guys, I don't know what to say about this book. This is one of the more recent ones that I've read, with this one being the third to last in the series. I have to say though, what mainly put this on the bottom of the list for me, there is a lot of really graphic descriptions of sheep in slaughterhouses, the processes that they go through to slaughter them and skin them, and you get the vibes. They described in so much detail, and I felt like it was very unnecessary, had not really that much relation to the mystery itself, not to mention it's a kid's story. But the other double whammy for this one is the extremely heavy-handed things that they were like really pushing in the story. It had a lot of themes of anti-vegetarianism, pro-slaughterhouse, anti-labor unions, anti-immigrants, and this was just such a propaganda feeling book, and it was so strange, so ridiculous. They could have done the whole mystery in a different location without all of the slaughtering, and it would have still been a perfectly fine mystery. Once again, a lot of like subplots that never tie back into the story or make any sense. It felt like a piece of propaganda from the 70s, and I did not enjoy reading this one bit. It was one I just had to really read and get through quickly, because if I didn't, I knew it was going to be one of those books that would take me 2 weeks to get through. So that one is definitely one of my top least favorite Nancy Drew books. Alright guys, so I know that my opinions of these will definitely vary from person to person, but these are the ones that I just did not enjoy reading. I didn't have a good reading experience. I didn't like the content of the book. I didn't like the plot lines, the characters. If there were any racial insensitivities in it, I didn't enjoy it. But these were the ones that were just some of the more harder ones for me to get through. These are definitely the ones that I would say, if you are wanting to get into the Nancy Drew series, but you're not wanting to like be all hardcore and read every book or read all of the originals, and if you're just looking to like pick up a couple Nancy Drew books to get a feel for the series, or you know, just read a few because you want to say you've read a few, these are not the ones I would recommend. I would only recommend these to people who do want to read every single Nancy Drew book as a completionist. I would say go for it, but just be aware that these are the ones that were very lackluster in my opinion. But if you want to know more of my thoughts on any of these books, definitely check out my full review videos. I talk about them in non-spoiler fashion, so I don't ruin any of the stories, but I do like to talk about things that we're either tracking throughout the series, or little fun facts or trivia, or things that I, you know, kind of would hyperfixate on. I definitely talk about all of those in my non-spoiler reviews, so if you would like to see any of those, definitely check them out. Alright guys, so that is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram or TikTok, links are below, and until my next video, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.